You worthless little nobody. How dare you spill coffee on these contracts?
The scalding liquid from the overturned mug was still dripping down Elena's white blouse as her boss, Richard Blackwell, grabbed the half-eaten sandwich from his desk and hurled it directly at her face. The turkey and mustard splattered across her cheek, breadcrumbs scattering onto the polished marble floor of his corner office. I'm so sorry, Mr. Blackwell, Elena stammered, her hands trembling as she tried to wipe the mustard from her face with a tissue. Hey, just before we continue, please go down and press the subscribe button so I can prove to my mom that I can do this. Thank you. The coffee pot slipped when I was pouring. Sorry doesn't fix $20 million worth of contracts that are now soaked. Richard's face was red with fury, spittle flying from his lips as he advanced toward her. You're nothing but a clumsy disaster. I should have fired you months ago. Elena's eyes filled with tears as she dropped to her knees, desperately trying to blot the coffee from the important documents scattered across the floor. Her heart pounded as she watched the ink running on several pages, knowing this mistake could cost her the job she desperately needed. As a single mother working 2 jobs just to make rent, losing this position at Blackwell Industries would be devastating. Please, Mr. Blackwell, let me try to save them, she whispered, her voice breaking. I can work overtime. I can get away from those. Richard kicked at her hands, causing her to fall backward. You've done enough damage, you pathetic. The office door suddenly swung open with such force that it slammed against the wall, causing both Elena and Richard to freeze. A tall, imposing figure filled the doorway, his presence immediately commanding the attention of everyone in the room. Dante Romano stood 6 feet 4 inches tall, his broad shoulders filling out his perfectly tailored black suit. His dark hair was slicked back, revealing sharp cheekbones and penetrating steel-gray eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the scene before him. There was something dangerous about the way he moved, like a predator sizing up his prey. Mr. Romano, Richard's voice immediately changed, becoming obsequious and nervous. I wasn't expecting you until... Clearly. Dante's voice was low and controlled, but there was an edge to it that made Elena's skin prickle with awareness. His gaze moved from Richard to Elena, still kneeling on the floor surrounded by ruined documents, her face stained with food and tears streaming down her cheeks. Dante Romano wasn't just any businessman. Elena had heard whispers about him in the halls of Blackwell Industries, whispers about his family's connections, about deals made in shadows, about men who crossed him and were never seen again. Some said he was the head of the most powerful crime family on the East Coast. Others insisted those were just rumors. But looking at him now, Elena could believe every dark story she'd ever heard. What exactly is happening here? Dante's asked, his tone deceptively calm as he stepped further into the office. The Italian accent that flavored his words only added to his intimidating presence. Richard straightened his tie nervously. Just a small workplace incident. My assistant here had a little accident with some documents, and You were just throwing food at a woman who was on her knees apologizing to you, Dante interrupted, his gray eyes never leaving Richard's face. I saw everything through your glass wall before I entered. Elena felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. Not only had she been degraded by her boss, but now this dangerous, powerful man had witnessed her at her lowest moment. She started to push herself up from the floor, her legs unsteady. It's really not as bad as it looks, Richard said quickly, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Elena here she's been having performance issues lately. Nothing that concerns our business arrangement, I assure you. Dante's expression darkened. Performance issues that require you to assault her with food? Assault? That's hardly... Richard began, but one look from Dante silenced him immediately. Elena finally managed to stand, though she swayed slightly. Her white blouse was stained with coffee and mustard. Her dark brown hair had fallen loose from its neat bun, and she could feel more tears threatening to fall. She'd never felt so small and insignificant in her life. What's your name? Dante asked, turning his attention to her. His voice was gentler now, but still carried that underlying steel. Elena Mitchell, she whispered, not daring to meet his eyes. Elena. The way he said her name sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. How long have you worked for Mr. Blackwell?" 2 years, she managed to say. "And in those 2 years, has he made a habit of throwing food at you?" Elena glanced nervously at Richard, who was shooting her warning looks. She needed this job. Her 6-year-old daughter, Sophie, was counting on her. But something about Dante's presence made her feel like lying would be more dangerous than telling the truth. "This is the first time he's thrown food," she said carefully. "But not the first time he's treated you poorly," Dante observed. It wasn't a question. Elena's silence was answer enough. Dante turned back to Richard, and Elena could see the businessman's face go pale. "Mr. Blackwell, we've had a profitable relationship for 3 years. Your company handles shipping logistics for several of my enterprises. Would you say our partnership has been beneficial to you?" "Extremely beneficial," Richard said quickly. "Your business accounts for nearly 60% of our revenue." 60%, Dante repeated thoughtfully. "That's a significant portion. One might say your company's survival depends on maintaining our relationship." "Absolutely, Mr. Romano, which is why I want to assure you that this little incident won't happen again. Elena will. Be more careful, won't you, Elena?" Elena nodded quickly, though her stomach churned at the implication that this was somehow her fault. "Oh, I'm not concerned about Elena being more careful," Dante said, his voice taking on a deadly quiet tone. "I'm concerned about you showing proper respect to your employees, particularly the employees who work late every night to ensure my shipments are processed correctly." Elena looked up in surprise. How did he know she worked late? "You seem shocked, Elena," Dante said, noticing her expression. "Did you think I wasn't aware of who actually handles my accounts? I make it my business to know everything about the people who work with my organization. I know you stay until 8 or 9 every night, making sure every detail is perfect. I know you've never made a significant error in processing any of my shipments. And I know that your efficiency has increased my profits by 15% over the past year." Richard's mouth fell open. I had no idea you were monitoring individual employee performance." "There's a lot you don't know about how I operate," Dante said coldly. "For instance, you probably don't know that I have very strong feelings about men who mistreat women, especially women under their authority." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elena could see Richard beginning to sweat in earnest now. "Mr. Romano, I think there might be a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Dante interrupted, "is your belief that I would tolerate a business partner who humiliates and assaults his employees, especially an employee who has been directly responsible for making me money." Elena's heart was racing. She'd never imagined that anyone, let alone someone as powerful as Dante Romano, would stand up for her like this. It was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. Dante walked slowly around Richard's desk, his movements predatory and deliberate. "Here's what's going to happen, Blackwell. You're going to apologize to Elena. A real apology. On your knees, the same position you forced her into." "On my knees?" Richard's voice cracked. "Mr. Romano, surely we can handle this in a more professional manner." "There was nothing professional about your behavior toward Elena," Dante replied. "So we won't be handling this professionally. Kneel. Now!" Elena watched in amazement as her boss, the man who had terrorized her for 2 years, slowly lowered himself to his knees on the coffee-stained carpet. His hands were shaking as he looked up at her. I apologize, Elena," Richard said stiffly. "That's not an apology," Dante said, his voice dangerous. "That's barely an acknowledgement. Try again. And this time, mean it, or I'll burn this entire company to the ground and build something new from the ashes. Something with better management." Elena's breath caught. The threat was delivered so calmly, so matter-of-factly, that she had no doubt he meant every word. Richard's face went white. "Elena, I am deeply sorry for throwing food at you. It was completely inappropriate and unprofessional. You didn't deserve to be treated that way, and I was wrong to blame you for an accident. Please, forgive me." Elena stood frozen, unsure how to respond. This was beyond anything she could have imagined when she'd walked into the office that morning. "Better," Dante said. "Now, here's what else is going to happen. Elena, you're going to clean yourself up and take the rest of the day off. Paid, of course. Mr. Blackwell is going to personally handle all of your work for today while you recover from this incident." "But I have the Morrison presentation this afternoon," Richard protested from his position on the floor. "Then you'd better figure out how to handle both," Dante replied coldly. "Elena, you'll also be receiving a formal written apology from Mr. Blackwell by tomorrow morning, along with a significant raise. 50% increase, effective immediately." Elena gasped. 50%, but... "You've been underpaid for the quality of work you provide," Dante said simply. "Consider it compensation for the hostile work environment you've been enduring." Richard looked like he was about to protest, but one glance at Dante's expression silenced him. "Furthermore," Dante continued, "if I hear of even the slightest mistreatment of Elena or any other employee in the future, our business relationship will end immediately. And Mr. Blackwell, when I end business relationships, I don't do so quietly. Do we understand each other?" "Yes, sir," Richard whispered. "Good. You may stand up now." As Richard struggled to his feet, his expensive suit wrinkled and his dignity thoroughly shattered, Dante turned to Elena. "Come with me," he said gently. "Let's get you cleaned up." Elena hesitated. Going anywhere with Dante Romano, no matter how grateful she was for his intervention, seemed dangerous. Everything about him screamed power and peril. I should probably just go home," she said softly. "Elena." The way he said her name made her look up and meet his eyes for the first time. They were the most intense gray she'd ever seen, like storm clouds, but there was something else there too. Something that made her feel safe, despite everything she'd heard about him. "Trust me." Against every logical thought in her head, she found herself nodding. Dante placed a gentle hand on her lower back, guiding her toward the door. The touch sent electricity through her entire body, and she was grateful that her coffee-stained blouse hid the goosebumps rising on her skin. "Mr. Romano," Richard called out desperately as they reached the door, "what about our 2 o'clock meeting?" Dante didn't even turn around. "Reschedule it! You have work to do." Elena found herself being led through the offices of Blackwell Industries, acutely aware of her disheveled appearance and the curious stares of her co-workers. But Dante's presence beside her made her feel protected rather than embarrassed. They took the elevator down to the parking garage, where a sleek black Mercedes waited with a driver behind the wheel. "I can't get in your car," Elena said suddenly, reality crashing back down on her. "I don't even know you, and I've heard... stories." Dante stopped and turned to face her fully. "What stories?" Elena swallowed hard. That your family is... involved in organized crime?" Dante finished for her, his expression unreadable. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. "And what do you think?" he asked. "I think," Elena said carefully, "that you just threatened to burn down a company to defend someone you barely know. And I think that most legitimate businessmen don't inspire that level of fear in people like Richard Blackwell." A slow smile spread across Dante's face, and Elena's heart did something complicated in her chest. When he smiled, he was devastatingly handsome. "You're very observant, Elena Mitchell," he said. "Yes, my family business operates outside traditional legal boundaries. Yes, I am what you might call a dangerous man. But I have never hurt an innocent person, and I never will. The question is, do you trust that?" Elena stared at him, her mind racing. She should say no. She should walk away right now and take the bus home to her small apartment, grateful for his intervention, but smart enough not to get further involved with someone like him. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see a monster. She saw a man who had stood up for her when no one else would. A man who had given her back her dignity and demanded she be treated with respect. "Yes," she heard herself say. "I trust that." Dante's smile widened, and he opened the car door for her. "Then let me take care of you." The interior of the Mercedes was luxurious beyond anything Elena had ever experienced. Soft leather seats, subtle ambient lighting, and a partition between them and the driver that afforded them privacy. "Where are we going?" Elena asked as the car pulled out of the parking garage. My penthouse, Dante said. You need to clean up, and I have clothes there that should fit you. Elena's eyes widened. You have women's clothes at your penthouse? I have a sister, Dante explained, seeming amused by her reaction. Isabella often stays with me when she's in the city. You're about the same size. Elena relaxed slightly. Oh. Were you jealous, Elena? Dante asked, his voice taking on a teasing quality that was somehow more dangerous than his earlier threats. I barely know you, Elena protested, though she could feel her cheeks heating up. Why would I be jealous? Because, Dante said, moving slightly closer to her on the seat, you felt the same thing I did when our eyes met in that office. Recognition. Elena's breath caught. Recognition of what? That everything just changed. Before Elena could process what he meant, the car was pulling up in front of a gleaming high-rise building. Dante helped her out of the car, his hand warm and strong around hers. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent, but charged with tension. Elena was acutely aware of Dante's presence beside her. The subtle scent of his cologne, the way his suit jacket stretched across his broad shoulders. When the elevator doors opened directly into his penthouse, Elena gasped. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, and the space was decorated with elegant, expensive furniture that managed to feel warm rather than cold. The bathroom is through there, Dante said, pointing down a hallway. You'll find everything you need. I'll have Isabella's clothes laid out for you. Elena nodded and started toward the bathroom, then turned back. Dante, why are you doing this for me? He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Because in 20 years of business, I've never seen anyone handle my accounts with such care and attention to detail. Because you work harder than men making 3 times your salary and never complain. And because, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, because when I saw you on your knees in that office, something in me broke. I couldn't stand seeing someone treat you that way. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. But you don't even know me. I know enough, Dante said softly. I know you're a single mother who works 2 jobs to provide for your daughter. I know you put yourself through night school to get your business degree. I know you've never missed a day of work, even when you were sick. And I know that despite everything you've been through, you still have kindness in your eyes. Elena stared at him in shock. How do you know all of that? I told you, I make it my business to know about the people who work with my organization. But, Elena... Dante stepped closer, and she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I didn't have you investigated because of business. I had you investigated because I've been watching you for months, wondering how someone so beautiful could also be so completely unaware of her own worth. Elena's mouth fell open. You've been watching me? Every time I came to Blackwell Industries, I found myself looking for you, making excuses to walk past your desk, scheduling more meetings than necessary just to catch glimpses of you. Dante's confession was delivered in that same matter-of-fact tone he'd used to threaten Richard, but the effect on Elena was completely different. I had no idea, she whispered. You were always so focused on your work, so professional. I convinced myself it was just attraction, that it would pass. Dante reached out and gently touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away a streak of dried mustard she'd missed. But seeing you humiliated today... Elena, I would have burned that building down before I let him continue degrading you. The intensity in his voice made Elena shiver. She should be terrified by his possessiveness, by the barely contained violence she could sense beneath his controlled exterior. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. This is crazy, she breathed. I can't be attracted to someone like you. It's dangerous and impossible and... Dante silenced her by stepping even closer, his other hand coming up to frame her face. Elena, look at me. She met his eyes, and the storm she saw there took her breath away. I am dangerous, he said quietly. I won't lie to you about that. My world is not safe or simple or easy, but I swear to you, on my mother's grave, that you would never have anything to fear from me. I would die before I let anyone hurt you, including myself. Elena felt tears pricking her eyes again, but these were different from the tears of humiliation she'd shed in Richard's office. These tears came from a place of overwhelming emotion, from the realization that this powerful, dangerous man was looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I have a daughter, she said weakly, as if reminding herself of all the reasons this was impossible. Sophie, Dante said, and Elena's eyes widened in surprise. She's 6 years old, loves ballet and butterflies, and she's the reason you work so hard. Elena, I'm not asking you to introduce me to your daughter tomorrow. I'm asking you to let me take care of you today. Let me show you how you deserve to be treated. Elena's resistance crumbled. She nodded slowly, and Dante's smile was like sunrise after the darkest night. Go clean up, he said gently. Take all the time you need. The bathroom was as luxurious as the rest of the penthouse, with a massive soaking tub and a shower that had more settings than Elena's entire bathroom at home. She stood under the hot spray for a long time, washing away the coffee and food stains, but more than that, washing away the humiliation and degradation she'd felt in Richard's office. When she finally emerged, wrapped in the softest bathrobe she'd ever felt, she found clothes laid out on the bed in what was obviously a guest room. A simple but elegant black dress that looked like it would fit her perfectly, along with undergarments that were exactly her size. The dress fit like it had been made for her, hugging her curves in all the right places while remaining tasteful and sophisticated. Elena stared at herself in the mirror, hardly recognizing the woman looking back at her. She looked powerful, beautiful, nothing like the broken, humiliated woman who had been on her knees in that office just hours ago. She found Dante in the kitchen, and the sight of him stopped her in her tracks. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his white dress shirt, and he was standing at the stove, stirring something that smelled incredible. You cook? Elena asked, surprised. Dante glanced over his shoulder and went completely still when he saw her. His eyes traveled over her, slowly, appreciatively, and Elena felt heat pooling in her stomach. You're beautiful, he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. Elena blushed. The dress is lovely. Please thank your sister for me. I'll buy you 100 dresses if they all make you look at yourself the way you're looking at yourself right now, Dante said, turning fully to face her. How am I looking at myself? Like you finally see what I see, he replied. Like you finally understand that you're worth protecting, worth fighting for. Elena's breath caught. Dante. Are you hungry? He asked, seeming to sense that she needed a moment to process everything that was happening between them. Elena realized she was starving. She'd been too nervous to eat breakfast that morning, and the incident with Richard had happened right around lunchtime. Yes, actually. Good. I make excellent pasta, Dante said with a grin that was boyish and charming, and completely at odds with his dangerous reputation. They ate at his dining table, which offered a spectacular view of the city. The pasta was indeed excellent, and Dante proved to be surprisingly easy to talk to. He asked about her daughter, her dreams, her goals for the future. He told her about growing up in his family, about the burden and responsibility of the Romano name, about his efforts to legitimize some of their business interests. Do you ever regret it? Elena asked. The path your life has taken? Dante considered the question seriously. I regret some of the things I've had to do, but I don't regret who I am, because who I am led me to you. Elena set down her wineglass with shaking hands. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes me want to believe in fairy tales, she admitted. And women like me don't get fairy tale endings with men like you. Dante reached across the table and took her hand. What if I told you that men like me don't get to feel the way I feel about you? What if I told you that you're the first person in 10 years to make me want to be better than I am? Elena's heart was racing again. Dante, this is all happening so fast. This morning, I didn't even know you knew who I was. And now? He prompted gently. And now I'm sitting in your penthouse, wearing your sister's dress and falling for a man who could probably have me killed with a phone call, Elena said with a shaky laugh. I could, Dante agreed matter-of-factly. But Elena, I could also protect you from anything and anyone. I could make sure you never have to work 2 jobs again. I could give your daughter opportunities you never dreamed of. I could worship you the way you deserve to be worshipped. Elena pulled her hand away and stood up abruptly, walking to the window. The city sprawled out below them, millions of lights twinkling in the gathering darkness. "You're offering me a life that isn't real," she said quietly. "You're offering me fantasy." She heard Dante's chair scrape against the floor as he stood, and then she felt his presence behind her. "Look at me, Elena," he said softly. She turned, and the expression on his face took her breath away. There was vulnerability there, mixed with the intensity she was beginning to recognize as uniquely his. "This is the most real thing I've ever felt in my life," he said, reaching out to cup her face in his hands. "I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't work. But Elena, I also know that I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. I know that seeing you hurt today made me want to burn the world down. And I know that if you walk away from me right now, I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that I didn't fight harder to keep you." Elena felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of me?" Dante asked, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "Of this. Of how much I want to say yes to whatever you're asking me." "Then say yes," Dante said, stepping closer until she could feel his breath against her skin. "Say yes to letting me take care of you. Say yes to seeing where this goes. Say yes to believing that you deserve to be treated like a queen." Elena stared up into his storm-gray eyes, seeing her own future reflected there. It was a future that was uncertain and probably dangerous, but it was also a future where she was loved and protected and valued. "Yes," she whispered. Dante's smile was brilliant, and then his lips were on hers, and Elena forgot every reason why this was a bad idea. His kiss was gentle at first, almost reverent, but when she responded by wrapping her arms around his neck, he deepened it with a passion that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Elena," Dante said, resting his forehead against hers, "I want you to know that this isn't just physical for me. What I feel for you, it's everything." "For me too," Elena admitted, surprised by her own boldness. "I want to do this right," Dante said. "I want to court you properly. I want to earn your trust and your daughter's acceptance. I want to show you every day that choosing me was the right decision." Elena smiled through her tears. "And if I choose you, what happens to my old life?" "You keep whatever parts of it make you happy," Dante said seriously. "Your independence, your relationship with Sophie, your goals and dreams. I'm not asking you to give up who you are, Elena. I'm asking you to let me add to who you are." It was the perfect answer, and Elena realized that despite everything she'd heard about Dante Romano, despite the danger that surrounded him like a second skin, she trusted him completely. "I choose you," she said quietly. Dante's response was to kiss her again, and this time Elena let herself get lost in it completely. She let herself believe in the fairy tale, in the possibility that a woman like her could find happiness with a man, like him. When they finally separated, Dante took her hand and led her to the couch, where they spent the rest of the evening talking and kissing, and planning a future that would have seemed impossible just hours before. As Elena curled up against Dante's chest, feeling safer and more cherished than she had in years, she thought about how the worst day of her professional life had turned into the best day of her personal life. "Dante," she said sleepily, "thank you. For today. For standing up for me. For seeing something in me worth protecting." Dante's arms tightened around her. "Thank you for trusting me, despite every logical reason not to. And Elena?" Tomorrow I'm going to start showing you just how precious you are to me. Every day, for the rest of our lives." Elena smiled against his chest, finally allowing herself to believe in the fairy tale. Because sometimes, she realized, the most dangerous men make the most devoted protectors. And sometimes the most unexpected love stories are the ones with the happiest endings. 6 months later, Elena stood in the same office where her life had changed, but everything was different now. Richard Blackwell had been replaced as CEO after an internal investigation revealed years of employee mistreatment. Elena herself was now the director of operations, a position Dante had helped her earn through her own merit and qualifications. But more importantly, she was wearing an engagement ring that caught the light every time she moved her hand, and planning a wedding to the man who had taught her that she deserved to be treated like a queen. And in a few hours, she would go home to the beautiful house Dante had bought for them, where Sophie was already calling him Papa Dante, and where Elena fell asleep every night in the arms of the most dangerous man in the city, who was also the gentlest man she'd ever known. Sometimes, Elena thought, as she admired her ring, the best fairy tales start with the worst days, and sometimes the most dangerous men are exactly the ones you need to save you.